Joining me now is Colonel Rob Maness. He is not only a broadcast partner with us here at 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern each and every day, but he also is one of the 3 guys that wrote the Black Book to go with the nuclear football that travels with the President of the United States. He was in that part of the Pentagon that deals with nuclear war. And you guys might remember the Colonel and I last year, Logan, did well over an hour on what goes down when nuclear war breaks out. And it was quite instructive. So he's a guy we definitely have to turn to tonight, and we're going to do that now. Colonel, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I just asked David Pine some questions. I want to ask you now. What do you make of the Secretary of War calling in 800 generals and admirals to Langley? What do you make of this? And why Langley, by the way? Why not the Pentagon? David Pine said the same thing. Why wouldn't you go to a more protected place like the Pentagon? Why Langley?
Langley's more protected than the Pentagon.
Is it really?
It's easier to get in and out of. You get backed up when you're going into the Pentagon with that many, especially with that many general officers. You're going to have people standing around outside the security perimeter of the building. Remember, the parking lot is open to the public. You know, I just drove through there in a Uber the other day, last week. So
we parked our big motor coach there in May. Dolly went potty on the Pentagon ground, didn't you, Dolly? Yeah, you did. She left him a present, I'm sure. But yeah, we drove a big old 50-something foot long motor coach and parked there for several hours in the parking lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Langley is more secure. So that's a good point. All right. So
if it's Langley, I thought they were going to go to Quantico, but I hadn't seen any actual reporting.
Well, maybe it was Quantico, Logan. We can look that up. Maybe I misspoke. Maybe it was Quantico. I think it is Quantico, to be honest with you.
Quantico is where the Marine Corps training is and FBI training, so it's very secure. Also,
okay.
Close to DC.
So what do you make of this whole thing?
I think it's great. I think they should be nervous because
Who's they?
The generals and admirals that he's calling in. They're in command positions, from what I understand, and they have not been implementing his policies and the president's policies appropriately. It's time for what we would call a come to Jesus meeting.
So do you think he's calling in some guys to fire them, or is he preparing for war?
I don't know what he's doing, but he's definitely got a problem with policy implementation. No doubt in my mind. Preparing for war? I doubt it. But that doesn't mean that he won't take the opportunity to have a discussion if he wants to. Why not?
What do you make of the report by DNI last week about first responders getting ready, prepared, and then the Secret Service announcing the SIM servers, all the SIM cards, disrupting communications? We don't know who did it. Seems to be a foreign actor. And by the way, today we had 911 go down in Mississippi and Louisiana. They're now saying it was a fiber cable that got cut, which if that's the case, okay. But there you go. It's that easy, folks, to cut down your 911 communications statewide. What do you make of, though, the timing of the Secret Service coming out about the SIM cards and the DNI report just a few days before it on first responders? Is this what enemy states would do if they're preparing an attack inside our country, as Gordon Chang and many others have been warning?
Absolutely, it's what they would do. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, Brandon. They probably were able to find it because they were looking closely at the New York City area because of the United Nations gaggle that just happened there. And I'm glad they released it, but you know what? Unfortunately, the American people can't trust the institutions in this government yet, even though President Trump's done a wonderful job replacing leadership and those kind of things. You still have the workers and the mid-level management and upper mid-level management leadership, like you have with the general officers and admirals in the United States Armed Forces, that are not necessarily properly implementing President Trump's orders and his policies. They may look like it. They may act like it, but when you see the results, it doesn't look like it's a clean result. And so I'm glad they released it. I think they should release all that they have in this area because, look, those of us on the outside that are familiar with intelligence, familiar with the enemies that we have here inside the country, like the 100,000 plus Chinese military age males that came in the Biden administration, those were not asylum seekers. The Chinese government doesn't allow that many communists to leave and become refugees, especially in the United States. They're here for a purpose. What is their purpose? We've never been told what anybody in the United States government thinks is their purpose. We should be told. Without the citizens, we will not defeat any effort like what's being predicted by Sarah Adams and others that in this intel business, that Al-Qaeda is in the country, that the Chinese are in the country, the Venezuelans are in the country, the Iranians are in the country, and they all wish us ill and are preparing attacks. And the Al-Qaeda attack is said to have a goal of being larger and more horrendous and more visible than the October 7th attacks on Israel. In order to do that, you have to have a system like what was released by the DNI, that information in all the major cities and most of the minor cities across the nation, because that's what the goal is to do an attack across the nation. And they could use that system to isolate 911 first responding forces, get them to go to the wrong place that's far enough away from the actual small towns or villages that they're going to attack and put on TV when they behead babies and rape women in public and drag them through the streets like they did on October 7th and get away with it before they melt back into the background. That's a strong possibility. It's not just somebody. I'm not just somebody that's trying to scare people. I'm just saying the facts are the facts. Over 70,000 Afghan refugees from the withdrawal debacle, not vetted. What percentage of those are Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Taliban? Here. Folks coming in from Syria, right here. What percentage of the Chinese military age males? That's like 8 divisions worth, 8 Army divisions worth that are inside this country now. Nobody even knows where they're at, Brandon. What are they doing? Why is all this land being purchased and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party around our strategic military installations? Why is farmland being allowed to be purchased by the Chinese communists and other nationalities and states inside the country of the United States? There are more questions there are answers, and our institutions need to be making answers public so Americans have not only the opportunity to defend themselves and their families, but to defend our country like the Americans that established this country and wrote that Constitution and that Second Amendment desired to do. And that's the only thing that would work with the size of nation that we had. Do you think the Trump administration is preparing to lay off and fire a bunch of government workers? The government threatened with a threatened government shutdown. I mean, they always threaten it. If it will happen or not, I don't know. Do you think the purging of these federal workers, many of them who are, revolutionaries. I mean, we have them on video, some of them bragging about the agencies they work for, and they were going to disrupt the elections and do this and do that. We've had on people that have captured all those Zoom meetings and played them, and they tell you all the government agencies they work for. So we clearly have Islamist, Marxist, anarchist, et cetera types in our own government, in the bureaucracy, civil servants, if you will. Do you think that Trump administration... In uniform, go follow the hashtag on X, revolutionaries in the ranks. Thousands of them that that volunteers have isolated, found, and reported to Secretary Hicksek, to the point where his X account responded and said, "We're tracking on every one of these; they'll be held accountable." It's
revolutionaries in the ranks.
That's even worse than in the bureaucracy.
Yeah, it is.
They're in uniform, exactly.
Buckle up, gang. I'm gloves off in this essay about revolutionaries in the ranks.
And this coming Monday, I'll have Dr.
Red
Chase
State,
Spears on.
September 23rd. This is a brand new article. I was wrong. There is an extremism. Okay, you can have them on.
Yeah. That's Chase Spears. He's my guest next Monday.
Excellent. I was wrong. There is an extremism epidemic in the U.S. military. So do you think this purging of the civil servants and now maybe the purging of the military are you think these are two separate stories, or do you think they're any way tied together?
Well, I'm sure at some point they're tied together. Who knows at what level they are, but they're all the same problem. is the revolutionaries inside the United States government that have been left in place like ticking time bombs.
Mm-hmm.
They're self-identifying because of their celebrations about Charlie Kirk's public execution for being a Christian and exercising First Amendment free speech rights. But they're there. There are a lot more there than are self-identifying. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the shooters? We've had our friend Hadia on here. She tracked ISIS with the FBI, State Department, and these different agencies. She said they were always a step ahead of us. And she's been on this broadcast last week saying, I believe a lot of these young 20-something shooters, they're really getting Islamic training. They don't care if they convert them anymore. It's not about that. It's just about using them and turning them into jihadis. Do you believe that this is a coordinated red-green axis with these, all of a sudden, these sniper shooters? I was showing the audience, or talking about it, I should say at least, on radio yesterday. Snipers in the U.S., the history. Let me bring it up real quick. And, we haven't really had that many snipers in the U.S. when it comes to the long history of them, compared to like school shootings and this kind of thing. I think the one I remember starting out was in, I think, 1966 in Austin, Texas. That was a former military guy. So all of a sudden,
San Antonio or Austin?
Yeah, it was Austin. Yeah. So what do we got going on now that we have snipers? They're using snipers. Seems like we've gone from school shooters to snipers. Does that progression tell you anything, number one? And number two, it's gone basically from young teenagers to 20-somethings doing it. Do you think this is red-green axis helping them? And if so, how would they do it?
Remember what I've said all along when we've talked about this issue with the snipers themselves. It's come up. They're getting training, but it's just enough training to be effective at accomplishing the specific targeting mission that they're giving. It's not enough to make them look like professional snipers. But the problem with that is, which makes people lead people to believe, well, they got it online or whatever, is you have to practice for this stuff to be that good. Okay, especially like the shot that killed Charlie Kirk. I mean, that a lot of experienced shooters are saying, that's an easy shot, et cetera. But if you aren't used to doing that guy was, if you look at the video timestamps that they have on him, he was running for 60 up until the last 60 seconds before he fired the shot. That means he had to get the rifle out and get in position properly, control his breath, control his stress, and pull that shot off to be enough to be effective and hit a target, let alone kill Charlie Kirk. And he was able to do that. Remember, 60 seconds is all he had to get in position and fire that round effectively. So you had to have some level of training. And then you got to work your way out from the target area and take a look at, well, how complex is this target area? That shoot site was chosen after surveillance and reconnaissance occurred. Do you think this 22-year-old guy, knew that? Was he military? Had he had any training? He had some training and he had some support. That's what we're getting at. With the support, they're going to give him support like having professionals that have had military and intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance training and exploitation and dissemination training in the intel world, where they look at, do the analysis on a target site picture or the walkthrough of the site, those kind of things, and lay out where the best shoot site is from and give him that information. And then what about the routing? Where did he come from? What was the route that he took? How was he dressed? So he wouldn't look conspicuous and be able to get up on that roof to get across there to the shoot site itself. All of that requires professionals behind the shooter to provide him with that training, that information. And then you're talking about the logistics. Now, in this case, with the Charlie Kirk shooting, it looks like he stole a weapon from his dad that had belonged to his granddad or something like that was suitable. But he probably had some training from that, whatever team is behind him, about selecting the right firearm, because my understanding his family are Trump supporters, so they probably have multiple types of firearms. in the House. So that's where you're at. And then the communications capability. They've all of these assassins have had a certain level of sophisticated communications capability, command and control, reporting. I take you back to the Discord message that was supposedly sent to his boyfriend. Discord can be accessed by anybody that's got login and password credentials to be able to log into the site and see that. But the phrasing of the message indicates some training in operational communications. The ones that were read by the governor at that first press conference is what it indicated to me. So he's had some communications. He's got a communications team working it, a logistics team working it, a target site selection team working it, and a training team to teach him how to shoot and kill somebody with a rifle at distance like that. Does that sound like a lone wolf? No. Exactly right. It's not. What's my best guess, knowing what I know about the Chinese military-age males, the Islamists that are in the country, the Iranians, the Venezuelans, the narco-terrorist organizations that are in this country? The red-green axis is alive and well in this country. It's evident most by the mayor's race in New York City. That candidate in the Democrat Party is going to probably be the mayor in all likelihood, and he's a red-green alliance person, a Marxist Islamist. It's very clear in everything he says, does, his family background, all of it. Okay. But this part is about direct action, covert operations leading to a public event. And these sniper runs are small potatoes, though, compared to what they're planning.
Okay, let me just stop right there. Those are small potatoes compared to what they're planning. So here we have people like Sarah Adams coming out, former CIA gal, saying months ago that they're going to be these teams, 4 or 5 man teams, and some of them are going to fight to the death, and they're going to hit multiple sites in one day. Of course, that's consistent with what we were saying back in October 7th, because we were listening to the enemy who said we're going to do what we just did in Israel again and again and again, and we're going to do it in other places, including the U.S. But Sarah then starts studying it, and she starts getting her intel from her sources and whatnot. And she starts speaking about these teams, sniper teams particularly. Now, then all of a sudden we start having an increase in snipers. Are they watching and studying what one person can get away with at each of these events to hone their plans for multiple snipers at one time? In other words, is this not just terrorism, but it's studying and looking for the response to hone the bigger attack?
All of those studying their own operation and the response to that operation they're studying all of that in order to create tactics, techniques, and procedures to try to mitigate the risks because they're going to go in with more than just snipers. I'm sure snipers will be integrated into these teams, but these are going to be small unit tactics teams with rifles, grenades, maybe some grenade launchers, those kind of things. And they're not just going to hit a couple of cities in one state. They're going to hit multiple towns and cities across the United States. Think about the scale of what we're talking about here. Over 100,000 Chinese military-age males, over 70,000 just the Afghan refugees. We don't know how many thousands of Iranian operatives are in this country, and Venezuelan operatives are in this country, and they're all well-resourced. And we haven't even talked about the financing yet that includes Marxist, leftist financiers that are American citizens that have been shoveling finances to groups like Antifa for a very, very long time. And I believe Antifa is integrated with these foreign forces that are currently in the country that have vastly more resources that will enable this attack.
Wow. Okay. Here we have the Texas officials on the ICE shooting from yesterday. Listen to what he had to say about this kid.
The evidence is clear that this was intended as an assault on ICE personnel who come to work every day to do their job. Violent rhetoric has led to over 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers, and it has to stop. In contrast to those who would demonize our men and women, yesterday our brave officers ran back into danger, along with ATF, our partners, to save the detainees while shots were still being fired. Those ICE officers just showed the world who they really are. law enforcement officers who want the best for our country. That's ICE. Integrity, courage, excellence. They were willing to put their lives on the line to pull detainees out of the transport van to get them to safety. They are heroes, and I hope the media has the integrity to shine a light on this story. Enough is enough with the harmful lies and violent rhetoric. It has to stop. The shooter used the ICE tracking apps. Anyone who creates or distributes these apps that is designed to spot, track, and locate ICE officers are well aware of the dangers that they are exposing to law enforcement. It's a casting call to invite bad actors to attack law enforcement officers. It's no different than giving a hitman the location of their intended target, and this is exactly what we saw happen in Dallas yesterday.
All right, so they're using an app, and my guess is this kid used the app, but the question would be who built the app, right?
Exactly. Well, who built the app? Who trained them how to use it? I mean, they're not these apps are not always self-explanatory. But then who trained him on what to look for in the app to be able to spot the type of target he was looking for and figure that out? Because, it's my understanding the app just gives you an alert that ICE may be in your area and a geographic set of coordinates and those kind of things. But there's more data, I'm sure, available inside that app that it's picking up and the user would be able to extract from it. So those are big questions that have to be answered. And who's financing that? That's not it's not cheap to hire people to design an app or pay people to design an app.
Yeah, don't I know?
Yeah, well, you know that. Yeah,
with our own broadcast network, I can tell you how expensive they are. Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
You're not talking. By the way, just so the audience knows, we're not talking $2,000-$3,000 here.
No.
Okay, you're talking in some cases tens of thousands of dollars for one app.
Especially one that can pull this much information together that is real-time movement information and tracking information. That is not, it sounds easy to do, but it's not an easy thing to do, to design it and programming it and field it and test it so that it's reliable each and every time so that you can put it in the hands of a perpetrator or a team of perpetrators. And that's what's happened. And you know what? Our government has allowed it to happen. Nobody stopped it. What is going on with the institutions inside the United States government? Are they there to provide for the common defense or not, Brandon? I mean, that's the really big question here. There's two purposes to the Constitution, this compact that the states entered way back in the day. The first one is to provide for the common defense. And if they're allowing these people to infiltrate our country, in some cases enabling them and paying nonprofit groups, including religious groups like the Catholic Charities. There's a Jewish group too. I can't remember the exact letters for it. Michael Yon knows them because he's talked about them on your shows and mine and those kind of things. And there's Islamist groups that are out there, Muslims groups. There's all kinds of religious groups that are infiltrating people with the help of the United States government, which means we're paying for our own suicide, is what is happening here.
And then you add in Sharia finance, finance that's being done through banks in America, and we absolutely are funding terrorism. And I want to go back to the 911 going out today, because apparently there was a fiber that was cut. That's what the story is. I don't know if that's a cover story, if that's reality. I don't know, but I want to show a little clip here. Here you go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out here. About a little bit after 1 o'clock this afternoon, our staff realized that we were having issues with our regular telephone system, both in receiving and making outgoing calls. As the technical team started working on that, we received troubling reports that 911 calls were also not coming in, and started trying to work through that issue to determine if there was a problem here or elsewhere. Sometime shortly after 1:35-ish this afternoon, we received notification that there was a major fiber cut within the telephony system outside of the general area that's resulted in a 911 outage over most of Louisiana and Mississippi.
All right. So a fiber cut. All right. Let's just take it at face value. That's what it was. But that ought to show you how easy it is to take down 911. Don't you think our enemies know this as well? Because when we go back to April 2013, Metcalf, Southern California, somebody cut the 911 lines. They went in and under 19 minutes shot out the coolant systems for a power substation that ended up shutting down the power that went down to over to Silicon Valley. The FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, brings in the Navy SEALs to study it. Apparently, they found rock formations that were pre-placed so they would know where to stand at night. So there had been reconnaissance and preparation in advance. Get in, get out, about 19 minutes, cutting the 911 lines. These people know how to cut 911 lines. They know where they're at. They know what's going on. And, some of them have gone and gotten jobs, not only in the military, but apparently some of these radicals have made it into the Secret Service and are celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk and didn't want to do their job on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania that year with the attempted assassination of President Trump. So we know they have blueprints. They have passwords likely. They are in the server rooms. They are all over us thanks to affirmative action, political correctness. So whether this was just a fiber cut, okay, fine. But this ought to show the American people how easy it is to shut down communications. And when it hits the fan, you're going to be on your own. Your first responders, that D&I report the other day, so directed at the first responders. They are planning on the first responders being attacked and overwhelmed. The American people not only will be on their own, they may have to actually go to their police stations and offer to help the police. I don't know how the police are preparing to deal with that and patriots that are saying, I'm willing to do that. I think a lot of guys are going to stay at home and hunker down with their families. But I had a family member that had to take a relative to the hospital in Illinois the other day. Went by ambulance. Ended up sitting in the waiting room for 9 hours. Brought in by ambulance, put into the waiting room for 9 hours. Sitting in a wheelchair for 9 hours, waiting to get into a room and be seen. Other than grabbing a little bit of blood from the person in the waiting room, that's all that happened. They never got seen in that 9 hours. The family member said, I'm out of here. Took the family member out and went back home and sought help in another way. And we're not even at war. We're not even under a terrorist attack. I cannot tell you, listening friends, you need to have your own medical kits, your own wellness kit with your own antibiotics. I had the flu, you guys know, last year, a temperature of 103. If I couldn't get antibiotics at a temperature of 103 at my age, and that kept going up, you could die from this. The American people have no clue how fragile this system is. And I don't know if it's, like Blood Stop, and we have Blood Stop stuff and powder at our store at worldviewstore.com. But you think your grocery stores are going to be working? You think people are going to come in and stock the grocery store shelves? Do you think the truck drivers are going to be delivering groceries to the stores? If you have mass killings across the country, they're going to be scared to death. And yet the American people aren't prepared. And then I guess I say, Colonel, most of your neighbors aren't prepared. So you're going to have to shut it down, lock it down, and hunker down. And for some of you, you're going to have your neighbors knocking on your door begging for help because you chose to prepare while they chose to go on cruises and to Europe and buy the sports car and belong to the best golf club in town and build a $100,000 pool in their backyard. And you didn't. And I've told my wife, there's only one or two neighbors I'm going to help. The rest, they're on their own. Thoughts?
Well, my neighbors will be fine. I've talked to them, so at least the 4 or 5 that we've all talked did everything. The rest of them can fend for themselves. But look, these 300 devices in the D&I report were just for the New York area, the New York City area. I'm glad they released it, but just extrapolate that out and use your mind and think about how easy it is to establish these types of surreptitious networks across all of our infrastructure. that we depend on for life and death these days. There are think about the Louisiana and Mississippi outage of 911, a single fiber cut. All right, that means the network of fiber cables was studied to the point where they figured out the single choke point that would be required to take out 2 states' 911 systems. Think about that level of detail that the enemy knows about.
And by the way, Colonel, they didn't say to us...
If it was an enemy.
That's right. But they didn't say to us, oh, it was some guy working on a backhoe that cut it by mistake.
No, they didn't.
Now, maybe that's the case. But I would
You would think that point, though, would be very well protected and have special operating procedures around it if it's a single point failure for 2 states' 911 systems. But that's not even the worst of it, Brandon. The worst of it is these systems can be in place, and they probably already are through various means that look friendly. And they're, like you said, they're in our networks, they're in our control centers. Remember the Special Forces colonel that killed 2 Chechens that were posing as utility people walking transmission lines through his property in North Carolina?
Yes.
You remember that?
I do.
Chechen Muslims that had gotten utility jobs and showed up to check out the transmission lines on that gentleman's property, and they ended up getting themselves killed by him because they were acting suspiciously, and then they and it required him to defend himself. So not much was said about that afterwards. The government officials at every level need to be transparent with the American people. We are armed. We are ready. Those of us that are armed are trained to help. We cannot help you if you don't keep us in the loop and inform us of what's really happening. And there's no reason to hide this information, none whatsoever.
I'm so glad you reminded that. A Special Forces officer who killed a Chechen immigrant conducting utility work on his property in North Carolina will not face charges after a 3-month investigation of the shooting, law enforcement officials said. This was for Liberty, soldier will not face charges in killing of Chechen utility worker on his property back in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
They claim he was conducting
legitimate.
They claimed he was conducting legitimate utility work.
Unfortunately, we can't trust our institutions and government at any level anymore.
No.
I mean, it's sad. It hurts my heart to say that, but unfortunately, you can't trust anything that comes out in the media along those lines. Why should we? Fortunately for us, those guys ran into the wrong colonel, and it gave us a little hint, a blip on our radar to be taking a look at these kinds of things.
Well, and he had to have done something to cause that colonel to shoot him. He wasn't just he wasn't just walking the line.
Of course, and they never reported exactly what it was, but obviously the colonel defended himself and was right in doing so,
and got cleared for it.
Exactly right, which is not easy to do under the Biden administration if you're a member of the armed forces.
Mm-hmm. Now, President Trump from the Oval Office today, late this afternoon, signed an executive order related to Antifa. So this fits right into the conversation we're having tonight, which really begs the question, how much does he know that he's not telling us? I hope we don't know more about Antifa and these groups than he does. I hope he hasn't been so shadowed, because the media's had to tell him a few things. He's like, what? Wow, I'll know more about that by tomorrow morning. I'm like, how does he not know that? So hopefully we don't know more about Antifa and these groups than he does. Hopefully he knows a lot from briefings. But although about 90% of what you need to know is open source, you know that. Only about 10% is actually classified. But listen to what he said today about Antifa from the Oval Office in this executive order.
They're anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess, I probably know them. And you wouldn't know it. You're at dinner with them, everything's nice, and then you find out that they funded millions of dollars to these lunatics. Steve, could you say a couple of words?
Yes, Mr. President. This is a very historic and significant day. This is the first time in American history that there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, to dismantle Antifa, to dismantle the organizations that have been carrying out these acts of political violence and terrorism. What we have seen, if you look at whether it be going back to the riots that started with Black Lives Matter and all the way through to the Antifa riots, the attacks on ICE officers, the doxing campaigns, and now the political assassinations, these are not lone, isolated events. This is part of an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. It is structured, it is sophisticated, it is well funded, it is well planned. There is really no parallel like this to anything else in the country right now. There is an entire system of feeder organizations that provide money, resources, weapons, and when they're attacking ICE officers, they're attacking federal buildings, or they're isolating public officials for harassment, doxing, intimidation, and ultimately attempted assassination. It is all carefully planned, executed, and thought through. It is terrorism on our soil. Because of this executive order, Cash and Pam are going to have the tools they need, working with Scott, to take these organizations apart piece by piece. And the central hub of that effort is going to be the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF, which sits inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But for those at home who are worried about terrorism in this country, they need to understand, because of President Trump's strength, because of his vision, because of his leadership, we are now going to use the entire force of the federal government to uproot these organizations root and branch. And again, that's only possible because of President Trump and his leadership.
Thank you, Steve. Cash, please.
Wow. So there you go. That's good news. Thank you, President Trump, for that. But does he understand that they're working with international groups and red-green axis? You think he knows what the red-green axis even is?
It wouldn't surprise me if he's heard of it. It also wouldn't surprise me if nobody has brought it up on his radar enough to get his attention on it either. Right. I mean, think about the bazillion, trillions of bits of data coming across in front of you, and just in front of you every day. Yep. And this guy's the president of the United States. So he's really very dependent on the presidential daily brief and those kind of things. Luckily, he still looks at his phone and the social media stuff. There's a lot of reporters like Andy Ngo, Sarah Adams, yourself, that report the facts on these kind of things. And hopefully he's got that open source intelligence working to his advantage. And I think he knows enough to be aware of it, or he wouldn't have signed the executive order. They were, at the point he signed the executive order, they were already discussing International Antifa, which is an international organization. And the need for it to be designated as an international terrorism organization. Wow.
Well, that's good news. All right. So as we get ready to wrap, you obviously know that the foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister, has said that NATO is basically declared war on his country. We played that clip earlier tonight with David Pine. What do you make of that clip?
That's been said before. Something to that effect has been said before by Russian leadership in various positions and everything. But they know that if their air forces conduct incursions on NATO territory, if they're considered a threat, they're liable to be shot down and attacked by our defensive forces. And that won't surprise anybody when that happens. We've already done it, as a matter of fact, in the last 2 weeks. NATO aircraft have shot down drones that have incurred in various countries in Eastern Europe across into their international airspace. The countries that are part of NATO, some that are not, but all of those incursions have been tracked and looked at and analyzed very carefully. Up to this point, there have been no armed drones or aircraft that we know of that's been reported that have violated airspace into NATO countries. Or non-combatant countries in the region, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen at some point. Look, it's a war zone, and you can't contain these things specifically every single time. And quite frankly, wouldn't surprise me if the drones violating these countries' airspace are part of a deception operation, so the live warhead drones can get through their targets inside Ukraine.
Well, speaking of drones, we still don't know who's behind all those drones that are running up and down Washington, D.C. and our military bases. So could those play a role in these coordinated attacks coming to major American cities that we're talking about?
Yes, they absolutely could. And by the way, I did a whole show with Todd Wood this morning on drones that are showing up over Denmark air bases and international airports now and being reported by citizens, just like what was happening in New Jersey here in America not too long. Yeah,
here we go. Here it is. Drone swarm. Mystery drones now fly over French military air bases after 4 Danish airports were menaced by Scourge. There you go. All right, closing comments about what our audience should be doing tonight with all this information we've just dumped on them.
Buy more guns and ammo, train, talk to your 5 closest neighbors, coordinate self-defense for your community there. and look and see what reserve programs are available in your local law enforcement, and see if you can qualify to offer to help in a formal way, so that when the shooting starts, an informal ad hoc system doesn't have to be set up that puts lives at risk just because you have to do that. That would be a good idea. And pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to what's coming through your phone. A lot of it is influence operations and propaganda intended to fool you, to distract you, to keep you from knowing what's really happening around you. We lost Boone Cutler last week, a co-author with General Mike Flynn of the book 5G Warfare. And it is happening right before your eyes. It's not only at your doorstep, in your house. The enemy is there, and they're at war with us, and we have to be prepared and pay attention.
RobManus.com, RobManus.com, each and every day right here, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, here on Worldview Tube. Colonel, as always, thank you for your service to the country that continues even now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brandon.
Folks, if you do want to do some prepping, we do have stuff that you can get, freeze-dried food that tastes really good, has a 25-year shelf life. We have things that stop bleeding. We have all kinds of stuff, heaters, stoves that you used to cook with, all kinds of stuff, folks, gas masks, all kinds of stuff. WorldviewStore.com, WorldviewStore.com. And if you do want to get medical emergency kits like we have, get your antibiotics, have them on hand so that if something were to happen in the country, inventory goes down, you do have what you need so that a pneumonia or something that can be quickly cured and treated like I did with my own kit last year doesn't turn into something that's life-threatening because you can't get what you need. Make sure you go there for that, worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com. Now, if you appreciate what we're doing, we do need your support to keep pushing out free programming like this. So please consider going now, if you would, to worldviewfoundation.com and making a contribution of any size. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. We're not here to scare people. That's not our goal. That's why we do a lot of Bible teaching. We talk about anxiety and fear and trusting the Lord and God's providence. We talk about all those things. But, the Bible says a prudent man, a wise man sees danger, takes refuge. The fool ignores it, suffers for it. We give you a lot of other Bible verses on that as well. So one of the things we do here, folks, is we speak the truth. And sometimes the truth can be a little scary, a little unsettling. But what I have found as a father, and now as a grandfather, is that your fears that are legitimate fears, fear is a good thing. Adrenaline that causes you to get off of a railroad track when a train's coming or off the busy street because a bus is coming, that's God-given, that adrenaline to make you move and fight and flight, right? And what I find is that fear, that natural, normal, healthy fear can greatly be diminished when you start to prepare. A lot of fear comes from the unknown, and it comes from feeling vulnerable. But when you have taken necessary precautions, you don't feel quite as vulnerable. There is a point in time of which you say, I've done all I can do. Now all I can do is pray and, trust on the Lord. That's all you can do. But the Lord does expect us to prepare. And I do, again, tell you from personal experience, I sleep better at night, not only because I do trust the Lord, but I've done all I can do. I pretty much have done all I can do in the last 15 years. Preparing and prepping. And that preparing and prepping gives you some peace because you're like, well, if we were to see the power grid go down or power go out for a month or two, I've got plenty of food. I've got blankets. I've got medical kits. I've got everything I need pretty much to be able to make it through that as best as possible. It takes a lot of worrying off, like, what am I going to do if something happens because I don't have the things I need. So many of you have been preparing. And I hope that you will consider doing more if you haven't. You can do that at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. We'll be right back after this break.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.